Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Basketball Bulletin. My name is Trevor Lane, and oh my goodness, the NBA trade market is undefeated. De'Aaron Fox now being added to the trade front. It's already been a busy day. There's been a lot going on. I already dropped a video breaking down the latest Fox news and kind of how I see this breaking down salary cap wise. But I had this live stream scheduled. I had to push it back just a little bit. And wow, we've got a lot to talk about. And I know there's a lot of you here hanging out in the chat. If you guys have not subscribed yet to the channel, please make sure you do hit that subscribe button. There's a lot of stuff for us to get into on this one. Julius Randle, maybe a player the Miami Heat could be looking to get. Does that put Minnesota in the hunt for Jimmy Butler? Brandon Ingram, maybe to the Toronto Raptors. That was just a few hours ago. And now we've got the De'Aaron Fox news. Oh boy, what a day. What a day already in the NBA. Just a little warning, this is not going to be like an hour-long live stream. I'm going to get my daughter in just a few moments here in just probably about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll jump over to the front office show in a bit. Keith and I have a bunch of stuff to talk about too. But let me get into some of your questions, some of your comments, and all of that. The big news right now, De'Aaron Fox on the trade market, the Kings looking to potentially deal him ahead of the February 6th trade deadline. I think there's a couple things that are critical here to remember. And number one is that De'Aaron Fox, he does have a destination. Notice Sham said destination, not destinations. He has one team he wants to get to, and he's going to do what he can to scare off other shooters. And the reason why he can do that is because of this, and this is why Sacramento will probably need to trade him. It's because De'Aaron Fox is extension eligible this summer. He's a free agent in 2026. So what he's going to tell the Kings is, I will not sign an extension with you this summer. And if you don't trade me, I'll play for you for the next year and a half, but I will walk away to another team in 2026. And there's already teams lining up for 2026 cap space, the Miami Heat being one of them. So that's certainly part of the equation here. De'Aaron Fox can tell, is apparently, if he's asking for a trade, he is telling the Kings, I will not sign an extension with you, and I will leave in the summer of 2026, so you better trade me. But again, that's not this summer. That's summer after this summer. So the Kings, on their side, can slow play it and say, well, you know what? Yeah, De'Aaron Fox wants a trade, but we don't have to trade him right now. We can try to convince him to stay, and if we can't, we could trade him this summer. We have all the way until next year's trade deadline to trade him before we actually are staring down losing him for nothing. So that's what the Kings can do to try to create a bit of a market for themselves, to try to create leverage in this situation. But if De'Aaron Fox is also telling other teams that he will not stay with them either, so if there's, let's say the Lakers are interested, and De'Aaron Fox says, I don't want to be a Laker, well, in theory, that would mean the Lakers aren't willing to give up all the stuff that it would take to get De'Aaron Fox, because you'd only have him for a season and a half, and you'd have a guy who doesn't want to be there. So he can scare away other teams on the market and potentially whittle it down to just one team that's willing to really go all in to get him. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the Kings are going to have to take back a terrible deal. I think the Spurs make sense as a team for him to land with. The Rockets make sense as a team for him to land with. Maybe the Orlando Magic. There's a number of teams that could be really interesting for De'Aaron Fox, but whatever team it is going to still have to give up something, but Fox can do a lot to depress his own market because of this situation. It's the same reason why the Kings are pretty much going to have to trade him, is the same reason why he's going to be able to steer his market. Now, it's always possible that there could be a team that says, you know what, we don't care. We know you don't want to, we know we aren't your team, but we're going to give the Kings a better offer than what the team you want to go to is going to give. And we're going to expect you to come play. And over the next year and a half, we're going to try to convince you to stay. That's possible. I mean, hey, it worked for the Raptors. They didn't keep Kawhi Leonard, but they won a championship, even though they knew he didn't really want to be there. That could happen. I'd say it's unlikely, though. I'd say it's unlikely. So if it's already being noted that the Lakers are probably not the landing spot for De'Aaron Fox, that they are not his preferred destination team, despite being a clutch sports guy, yeah, I mean, if you're the Lakers, do you risk giving up? I mean, you would have to give up everything, right? I mean, it'd have to be both your picks. It would have to be probably Dalton Connect, Austin, Rui. I mean, all kinds of stuff that you're giving up in order to go get him. Now, the question really becomes, though, what are the Kings going to do next? Once you trade De'Aaron Fox, what are you getting back? Because if you look at the rest of this Kings team, it's not like they can suddenly just be awful and tank and get a super high pick. They're the 10 seed right now in the West. We do know the Warriors are going to try to move up. They're going to try to move up in the Western Conference so they can get passed by the Warriors. The Spurs, especially if the Spurs get Fox, maybe they could pass them. So the Kings can drop into the lottery, but is that even what they want to do? They missed the playoffs for 17 years straight. They don't want to do that again. And you still have Sabonis. You still have DeRozan. You still have Malik Monk. You've got enough players where tanking would be kind of hard. Like, you might accidentally win too many games to really tank, and especially given how competitive the tank race has already been, I don't know that they can drop into those high probability spots of getting one of the, superstar level potential anyway, superstar players in this year's draft. So I do wonder if the Kings might take the same approach as the Miami Heat did or are with the Jimmy Butler front, where they're telling teams, look, we want future stuff too, but we also want pieces that can help us win right now. I think the Kings could take a similar strategy where they say, yeah, we'll trade De'Aaron Fox. Yes, we'd like to get future draft capital and stuff, but this is not us going all in on young talent and the future. We need some pieces back in this move that we think can help us continue to win and stay in the Western Conference. So I think that's what they're looking for here as well. All right. Let me get into some of your questions and comments. And look, maybe the Kings go the other way and they say, hey, let's completely tear this thing apart and let's trade it. If that's what they're going to do, if they really want to tank, they've got to start talking about Sabonis. They got to start talking about Monk. They got to start talking about DeRozan and seeing if they can get all these guys off the roster. That if they really want to say if Fox is gone, we're tearing the whole thing down. If Sabonis tells them, hey, if Fox is gone, I'm out. If DeRozan tells them that, if Monk tells them that, then the Kings have to be very busy ahead of the trade deadline and tear the whole thing to shreds. Because otherwise, I think they're not going to lose enough games to get there. AJ said, with Fox being shopped, does this make it easier for the Lakers to get Cam Johnson, who the Kings are rumored to be favorites to land? In theory, right? But the problem is the market is so wide already for Cam Johnson. It's not just the Kings. There are a bunch of teams. Cam Johnson can fit on 30 teams. He's a great fit with 30 teams. So I think there's going to be a robust market for him regardless. It's not the Kings or bust for Cam Johnson. So I do think that maybe this takes away a suitor, right? If the Kings are now worrying about a De'Aaron Fox trade, maybe they're not a buyer on the Cam Johnson market. Who knows? Maybe it's a 3, 4, 5 team trade and Fox goes somewhere and Cam Johnson comes back to the Kings. Like that's still possible. But I also think that most likely if you're the Nets, this probably takes the Kings away from the Cam Johnson market. But again, every team can talk themselves into Cam Johnson being a fit. So that's the issue. So I don't think this suddenly means Cam Johnson can be had for less. Let's put it that way. And let's also remember too, with the Nets, they've got Cam Johnson on a multi-year deal. He's on a 3-year deal. So the Nets are rightly taking the approach with Johnson that, hey, if we don't move him right now, if we don't get what we want right now at this trade deadline, we can move him this summer. We can move him next year. We don't have to do this right now. We're losing plenty of games as is. We don't have to do this right now unless we're getting what we want. So the Nets are slow playing the Cam Johnson situation too. So again, I would not jump to, well, this means Cam Johnson can be had for less. I don't think that's where this is going to be. New report says he wants to go to the Spurs. That makes a lot of sense. If that's the case, if he wants the Spurs, that's the least ideal landing spot for the rest of the West. I can tell you that. But if that's accurate, if it's the Spurs, that is the least ideal landing spot for the rest of the West. But that would be great for San Antonio. And that's a great spot for Fox too, to team up long-term with Wemby. I mean, we know Wemby is a superstar. He is incredibly talented. Again, I can't confirm it. I haven't even seen the news myself. But if that's the case, that would make some sense. Then we're taking a look here. What could the Spurs potentially trade? I mean, could it be Devin Vassell? Would you move on from him? Keldon Johnson, I would think, could be in a deal. Harrison Barnes. They've got lots of contracts they could stack up. Obviously, you're not trading Wemby. You've got an expiring in Chris Paul. You could put him into the deal. That would give the Kings some future salary relief while still giving them somewhat of a win-now piece. What about Stephon Castle? Like if you're Sacramento and you can get Chris Paul and Stephon Castle, I mean, Castle's pretty damn good. That could be interesting too if it is the Spurs and you start putting together pieces. Again, Fox is good enough to where most teams are going to have to go, if not all in, pretty damn close to it in order to get him. Like, it's going to have to be a significant package to get De'Aaron Fox. So I think that's going to be really interesting here, seeing how far teams are willing to go to get him. By the way, he now vaults to being the best player on the trade market, right? He's ahead of Jimmy. He's ahead of Brandon Ingram. He's ahead of any of these other guys. He is the best player on the trade market, period. That's what De'Aaron Fox is. And so I do think that he's going to be somebody that whoever it is, if it's San Antonio, Houston, or whoever, they're going to have to be willing to give up significant pieces in order to get De'Aaron Fox. All right, let me get back into all your questions, your comments here. As a Thunder fan, I would love Fox to go to the Spurs and create a new rivalry. Man, look at that. Not ducking any smoke. The Thunder saying, bring it. Saying, go to the Spurs and bring it on. I like it. Could OKC get him? Could OKC go on? OKC has a bunch of future draft capital. They've got plenty of talent on their roster as well. But isn't that a bit duplicative? I mean, if you've got De'Aaron Fox and SGA, right? Like, I think you're getting diminishing returns there if you're combining those two, because they're both point guards. They're both ball handlers. While OKC probably has the assets needed to get into it, but if you're trading what it would take to trade to get De'Aaron Fox, are you actually making your team better by doing that, despite how good he is? So that's where I think that's a little bit of an issue. What about Miami? Yeah, I think Miami would love to get him. The question is how. They would have to feature another team, probably a team that would be getting Jimmy Butler, that would send stuff to the Kings, unless the Kings say, you know what? We'll take Jimmy. What if that's where this goes? What if the Kings say, we really want to win right now, so give us Jimmy plus a bunch of future draft capital, and we'll give you De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter, another salary that we're just looking to move, or Trey Lyles or something like that. I don't like that for the Kings. I don't like that for the long-term viability. If I'm the Kings, I don't look at what's happening with Jimmy Butler right now and say, hey, I want to build a team around DeMar DeRozan and Jimmy Butler and hope that they don't fall off the age cliff too soon. But I mean, Miami, look, every time a star level player becomes available, Miami is interested. So yeah, I think that Miami will certainly make the call. I just don't think about them as being the team to go get him. Would I like Sabonis on the Lakers? I mean, the question becomes, what do you think of Sabonis? Is he a 5 or is he the 4? Is he a 4 is he a guy you want to pair with AD? And is he the guy post LeBron? And if he is, and the Kings decide to truly, we're burning this thing to the ground, fire sale, we're trading everyone, right? Fox wants out, that's it, we're done. We want to tank and get as much draft capital as we can. Okay, well, a couple of Lakers first, plus you talk Rui, I'm sure the Kings would ask for Austin Reeves. I'm sure the Kings would want Dalton Connect. And even then, you're stacking up a lot of salary to get there to $40 million, including some salaries that the Kings wouldn't want to take back, like maybe Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, pieces like that. So I don't know that that's really what you want to go with if you are if you're the Lakers. And I don't know that would be the best offer if you're the Kings either, if Sabonis hits the market. But again, right now, all we know is that Fox wants out. And I'm more inclined to believe that the Kings would rather get pieces back to help them win if they're trading De'Aaron Fox, rather than just tear it all down. Because I don't know that you can truly rebuild with Sabonis and DeRozan and Monk. You're going to accidentally win too many games. But I think that if they are going to go that direction, then putting Sabonis on the block would make more sense. But I think most likely they'll try to get back some pieces that can still help them win while acquiring value for Fox. That's what they're going to look to do. You better have good spacing with AD and Sabonis on the floor at the same time. Yeah, right? Don't get me wrong. That's an incredible front court, right? I mean, Sabonis and AD, they're amazing. And there's a lot of ways they fit together, but they also, to a degree, occupy the same space on the offensive end, unless you really buy that Anthony Davis, his three-point shooting is enough of a threat. And it's been better this season, but that's essentially what you have to buy, or that Sabonis can shoot it out there a little bit. But otherwise, Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, although AD defensively covers a bit for Sabonis. Yeah, Sabonis gives you that physicality in the paint and all that. Plus, also, if you're making that move, you're essentially saying LeBron is going to be a 3 for much of the time. So there's a lot there that makes it a little bit of an uneasy fit. Do you know if the Kings' protected pick this year will turn into seconds? Let's take a look. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly find out here. Sacramento. Let's take a look. Boy, it takes a while to scroll past the Thunder when you're going down the list here because there's so many picks. Their list is very, very long of assets. Boy, the Spurs list of assets is long as well. When they've got picks, they've got an Atlanta first, they've got a Charlotte first, they've got a first from Chicago. They've got, but there's protections on a lot of these, but still a lot of stuff for San Antonio to stack up draft pick wise, if they want to. Ooh. All right, Sacramento. Their first goes to Atlanta. It's protected 1 through 12, and then protected next year. It's protected 1 through 10. And if those protections kick in through this summer and then next summer, then Sacramento instead sends a pair of seconds. So their pick is 1 through 12 protected this year. So in order to get down to that, to keep their pick this year, Sacramento right now, as they currently sit, they would be sending they would just barely be sending a pick to the Hawks. They have the 13th pick right now. So maybe there's a little bit more incentive to try to bottom out. But as of right now, they'd be sending the 13th pick. It's top 12 protected. And then next year it'd be top 10 protected. So they do lose this pick if they wind up winning too many, if they wind up going for it this year and continuing to try to win. If they bottom out and the Warriors pass them and say the Spurs pass them, then the Kings can put themselves in position to keep their pick this year. So that should also be a factor in all of this. And then next year, their pick is top 10 protected. So I know people saying, oh, well, the Hawks have their pick next year. Well, but it's if the Kings were to right now is the best case scenario for the Hawks, where it's the 13th pick if the draft stayed chalk. That's right now. So yeah, that's the best case scenario for Atlanta. So Atlanta probably actually isn't happy about this, because I think it increases the odds that the Kings do drop back. Even if they try to win, are they going to find a better player than Fox? Maybe not. So even if they try to win, they could fall back a little bit and wind up keeping their pick. Are the Kings going to do a total rebuild? Fox trade makes no sense. Yeah, no, the Kings don't want to trade Fox. Fox wants to be traded. Those are two different things. Yeah, here's another one saying if De'Aaron Fox leaves the Kings, his preferred landing spot is San Antonio. Man. And the Kings, the Spurs have a lot. They've got a lot of assets, a lot of picks, a lot of things like that they can cobble together. The real question becomes, what do the Kings want? Do they just want, if they want future draft capital, the Spurs have a lot of draft capital. They've got a lot they could offer. They've got they've got a number of their picks are protected, and so that takes away from some of the value. But right now, I mean, as of right now, you look at the Bulls first. Right now, it's only top 10 protected, so it's possible that pick could wind up conveying if the Bulls are, if they don't do what I think they should do and they win some more games. That pick could wind up conveying to San Antonio. San Antonio has their own pick this year. They can trade some draft capital in this year's strong draft class. And then if you're the Kings and you get, say, the Chicago pick, you at least have the option to get that Chicago pick, depending on what the Bulls do from here. You get the Spurs pick this year. Who knows? Maybe you move up in the lottery and you wind up walking away with Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or something like that, right? Like that's always possible as well. Mark said OKC will get Flagg next year. The problem is Philly's pick is top 6 protected. So I think you're probably going to have one overall, if not two, right? The first or second pick to get Flagg. And if the Philly pick moves up like that, then Philly keeps it. So that's the other piece to this, right? So that's interesting. If you're the Spurs, you've got draft capital in this year's draft class. If you give that up now, there's always the chance that, assuming you don't play your way out of the lottery, which maybe the Spurs will, if they get Fox, maybe they do, but it would move them. If they don't, then the Kings could be getting, that Spurs pick could move up, and maybe the Kings can keep their own pick if they fall back enough. But again, it comes down to what do the Kings really have an appetite for falling back? Do the Kings have an appetite for rebuilding after so many years of struggling, so many years of not making the playoffs, so many years of building and then rebuilding and tearing down and over and over and over again? Do they have an appetite for doing that? And if the answer is yes, then let's go. Start moving, guys. Sabonis, Fox, DeRozan, Malik Monk, see ya. Get them all off your roster as quick as you can. Try to keep your pick this year and look for the future. Keep Devin Carter. Keep Keegan Murray. Go from there, if that's the route you want to go. Otherwise, I think the dangerous thing here for the Kings is you trade Fox, you don't get back enough to help you win right now, and you do exactly what you're doing currently, and you give the 13th pick to the Atlanta Hawks. Because I'll tell you what, if you could find a way to get multiple shots at a top pick in this year's class, that could turn things around very, very quickly for the Kings. But I would understand if they don't have the stomach for doing something like tanking now. If they say, no, we still have Sabonis, we still have these guys, we're going to try to win, maybe they ask for win now pieces coming back. That's where a lot of this is going to be interesting. What do the Kings really want? What about the Heat going all in? Yeah. Again, is there a way to combo this into a Jimmy Butler trade? Is there a way to do something like that? Could Chris Paul be moved? Yeah, sure. You could send him. So if, let's say, the Spurs send Chris Paul to the Kings, and let's say if the Kings are trying to win, they'll just keep Chris Paul. If they're not, maybe Chris Paul hits the buyout market. And if that's the case, this is where Chris Paul's salary is actually very advantageous, because he does not make more than the mid-level exception, which would mean that any team could sign Chris Paul off the buyout market. So let's say Chris Paul is in a hypothetical. Let's say it's Chris Paul, Stephon Castle, and some draft capital plus whatever contracts you need to make the money work for De'Aaron Fox. Let's say that's the trade. And the Kings say, okay, we're doing this, but also Sabonis, peace, see you later. Monk, we're moving you. DeRozan, gone, right? They find moves for all these guys. And that's a lot of work to do in like 9 days. It's a lot. But if they do that, Chris Paul is going to show up in Sacramento. He's probably not even going to go to Sacramento. He's going to be like, yeah, no, I'm out. I'm not doing this. See you later. And if that's the case, he works a buyout with Sacramento, and then any team would be able to sign him. So that's something to consider too. Shubil said, no way in hell the Kings trade with the Lakers. Well, sometimes that's overstated. Like, yes, the Kings hate the Lakers, but they also had a deal a few years back that would have netted them Kyle Kuzma. Now, the Lakers were stupid and traded for Russell Westbrook instead, but they had a deal with the Kings. It was going to be Montrezl Harrell and Kyle Kuzma for Buddy Hield. That was the trade. It was ready to roll. So the Kings will trade with the Lakers. They will. Now, if De'Aaron Fox is telling the Lakers, I don't want to be there, they're not going to trade, especially since he's a clutch sports guy. Could you imagine Rich Paul saying, hey, he really doesn't want to go to your team, Lakers? And the Lakers say, well, we don't care. Screw you. We're doing it anyway. No, I can't imagine that. All right. There was a little bit more news that I just wanted to mention here before I move on. Brandon Ingram, the Toronto Raptors, now listed as a potential team to get him. So that's certainly something worth keeping an eye on. That's the first movement we've heard on the Brandon Ingram market in months, and nobody's been wanting to give him his next contract. Maybe the Raptors looking to combine BI with Scotty Barnes moving into the future. And then the Ian Begley brought up, or maybe it was Fred Katz. Anyway, so they brought up Julius Randle to be a name to watch going to the Heat in a Jimmy Butler trade. Maybe Jimmy going... I can't imagine he'd go back to Minnesota. I just can't imagine that happening. But maybe it's a 3-team trade or something that would see Randle head back there. All right, everybody. Ingram to the Raptors, LOL. Hey, I'm just telling you what's out there. I'm not making that up myself. That was from Mark Stein, and he knows what he's saying. Mark Stein has been doing this for a long. Mark Stein is part of the reason why I'm in this business right now. I grew up reading Mark Stein and all of his work. He knows what he's talking about. He's not going to throw stuff out there just for fun. All right, everybody. I appreciate all of you for coming in impromptu here. This crazy breaking news. De'Aaron Fox now on the trade market. God, I love the NBA. I love this league. I'm going to jump over and do the front office show with Keith Smith in just a moment here. But thank you guys for jumping in. If you haven't done so yet, please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications too, because we're going to be all over everything, all of the madness for the NBA trade deadline. So subscribe and then turn on those notifications. Thank you again, everybody. Truly do appreciate all of you. I didn't know how this was going to do. Once we started the basketball bulletin, I had no idea what the response was going to be. I've been extremely, extremely touched by the feedback that I've been getting and just how many people have been coming in here and enjoying what we've been doing. So again, thank you to all of you guys for making this possible. Thanks, everybody. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.